Hello YouTube, welcome back to a brand new video. My name is Kevin and this is the Red Pilling channel. So I want to discuss a little bit about, how Republicans can win going forward. But with that, I'm also going to be talking about a little bit about more about Venezuela, now that we've had some time to digest the situation, looking at it a little differently, and about some policy proposals Trump has actually proposed, and about the consequences if it doesn't get passed. So, so here's the thing. So we know last week, it's been a week ago now since what took place in Venezuela. Trump unexpectedly captured Maduro. We woke up that next morning that the Venezuelan leader was captured. And a lot of people were split on that. Some thought it was the most, and I have to say, whether you agree with it or not, that's the most badass thing I've ever seen a president ever do in the United States ever done. And I don't think a lot of us even knew that was allowed. So that's going to clearly cause some legal challenges. There's definitely going to be lawsuits about that if Trump even had a right to do that. But according to what's been said, he does. So, but he did it. Either way, he did it. And Maduro's out of power. And it's great for Venezuela, for their freedom and under a terrible dictatorship. Again, I could not imagine living under that. So, Donald Trump is doing a thing called the Monroe Doctrine. And it kind of goes under a thing of a new thing called imperialism. Is America going into that, what you would call a more imperialistic way of approaching foreign policy? And a lot of people, it's a really controversial thing. It's essentially it's a type of colonialism, and I know the left hate colonization, which, I mean, whether you like it or not, yes, there's a lot of times some oppression in colonialism, but obviously I don't think that's not going to happen with Trump. But historically there has been oppression with it. But then again, it's part of history. Nations conquer other nations, and at some point it's just part of history. So if you spend your time hating colonialism, then you basically hate all of history. So for those who complain and growl and are outraged over it, you have too much time on your hands, and you're brainwashed, I think. Anyway, so imperialism, though, and Trump is not trying to conquer anybody, though. That's the thing. So let me make sure I correct myself there. So imperialism is a practice, advocacy, extending nations' power and influence over the countries or territories through direct territorial acquisition, military force, economic domination, or political control. So there's different ways imperialism can be done. It doesn't always involve total controlling a nation. It often implies exploiting, I don't like that word, exploiting resources, imposing authority. But, so that's imperialism. So, is America heading to that stage of imperialism where, and I'm only asking that because Venezuela, the United States is going to be kind of controlling it for a little while until it can safely transition to the new leadership, because Donald Trump, while technically they did remove Maduro and everyone's panicked about regime change, this technically wasn't a regime change in the traditional way you understood this, because Maduro regime is technically still there. It's just Maduro's out, and Trump has agreed that one, I don't think he said the other one, Machado, I believe, is the opposition party, you could say, of Maduro. Trump said she doesn't look like she even has the support anyways. But either way, Trump thinks it's better to have I think Rodriguez is the vice, like their vice president version of Maduro, and he's gonna, and she's, I think she says the woman is gonna be taking over, which Trump has endorsed. And then I think because he's not a legitimate leader, I think they're gonna try to oversee that election, and then Venezuelans will decide if they want Machado or her. So, which is the best way to do it, because when you just over topple regimes like we've done in the past, you destabilize the country. So, and you risk migrant crisis, and there's a lot of problem. That's why intervention, we have to be really skeptical of how we do intervention now, because, and that's why people don't like it, because they just don't trust it, because we haven't done well. Thankfully, Trump is good at it, and he does it in a way that has more compassion, has cared about America benefit, but also caring for the, the people, that innocent people that can be impacted if you're reckless about it. And a lot of times the neocons of the past would like to they like to emotionally install leaders, like their puppet leaders, to in the name of spreading human rights and democracy. And while, yeah, we like to support people, we like the idea of freedom, you can't force it the way they've done so, and doing so risk a lot of problems. For example, when you toppled Iraq, for example, you killed Saddam Hussein, and then you disbanded the Iraqi army. And then what happened? You had that huge, you created what happened in Libya, and people were afraid that was going to happen, or in Iraq, I mean, and people are afraid that something like that could happen in Venezuela. And thankfully, because Trump's leadership, it didn't happen like that. But either way, Trump did it, and he didn't get anybody killed, and that's great. And Trump's intentions was America first, because the goal is to control our hemisphere. And, yeah, it was over oil primarily. Some say it was about drugs. Maybe, they do send drugs over here, and they're criminals they've sent over here, but I think it was primarily oil was the motivating factor. And it's largely to keep China out of our hemisphere. And I think that is America first. So, so if Trump does in the Monroe Doctrine, it technically is okay with intervention more in our hemisphere and not intervening so much out of our hemisphere. So that seems to be what the imperialism and what the Monroe Doctrine does. So it's controlling territories. So yeah. So with that being said, and even, somebody that hates intervention, Tucker Carlson's probably the most anti-war and least interventionist, the most anti-interventionist voice in the conservative movement. Even he said that you'd likely appreciate skepticism towards endless foreign entanglements, though this policy focuses more on hemispheric control than distant wars. So even Tucker acknowledged the intention here. So it is an American interest, though. So that is good. Even he acknowledged that. I think deep down he probably doesn't, because I don't know if he because you have to wonder, is imperialism going into an empire? Because Trump has talked about Mexico now, largely because Mexico is not really ran by anybody; it's ran by cartels. So they talk about controlling Mexico in certain ways. Canada, and obviously they talk about Greenland. So is that are we heading into more empire-ish direction? And I don't think Tucker supports empires, and really neither do I, but I guess it's one, if it's going to happen, then I guess, we have to look at the future and where we go from here then, if that is possibly the direction we go. I mean, we might be looking too far ahead, which we do, but I don't know. So that's where I am at Venezuela. I've cooled down, and I mean, if it's about keeping China out of our hemisphere and protecting, our interests, then great. And Trump is America first. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the people around him, the more old guards, I don't think they personally want peace. I think Trump does, but they don't. And I think that can sometimes make Trump look bad, and that's why I do think there's some people who've kind of lost trust in him because of that, who he has surrounded by. Like you have Mike Johnson, you have Lindsey Graham, you have Mitch McConnell, you have Thune. I don't even think is really that MAGA. It's a different type. So if we really want to be America first, we have to find a way to primary these people and really get new, fresh blood that are more in line with the more up-to-date party and not whatever has. Because the neocon, the party of Bush, which the most bushy voice is probably the more Ben Shapiro level. I think the brand has kind of moved on from that brand. That's no offense to Shapiro. That's not saying we don't want their voters, because we need every vote we can if we agree on the idea of Americanism and becoming things. But that brand to me cannot be the main. They can't be the leading voice anymore, if long term, if we are to win. But I'm going to say, though, if Donald Trump was not in charge of what happened in Venezuela, there's a good chance this may have ended in destabilization, because they would have, because the neocons wanted to replace Machado, the opposition, Maduro's opposition, without an actual election, and that would have likely had destabilization. So anyway, but I'm glad it didn't, and it seems it's in America first. So from what I have, there's a lot of information out there. It seems the GDP has grown. Here's some facts, though. Trump has made a deal with Venezuela because I think the interim leader has made a deal that Venezuela agrees to release large numbers of political prisoners wrongfully imprisoned by the Maduro regime. Good. The successful capture of dictator Nicolas Maduro was celebrated by Venezuelans across the globe. Venezuela agreed to turn over 30 to 50 million barrels of sanctioned oil to the United States. Venezuela has agreed to only purchase American-made products with the proceeds from the new U.S.-Venezuela oil deal. So clearly, this is America first. So, again, there's a lot of dooming. There's a lot of paranoia. The panicans on the right that doom and gloom, and, we're all guilty of doing that out of emotion. When you hear something like that, right away, it's kind of normal, and then when you sit back. So, we'll see what can happen. But we do have to be careful, though, because if it's possible, we may do more imperialistic approaches to some of these. Like I think heard Cuba, Mexico again, Canada, and not the most recent one is definitely Greenland, which I think Trump probably will end up winning that. But I think if what you have to be, and hopefully, yeah, and I think what you have to be careful with is that maybe it will work out, but if you're not careful and it takes off the wrong country, it could cause a war. And that's what I think some people are paranoid with doing all this. So I hope, again, I understand what people are saying. It definitely is a more America first, but putting America first can cause a war. And, well, that's different in that case. But we have to be really careful, because what if this doesn't work all the time, what Trump is doing? And we have to be. Trump is the only one I've trusted on when it comes to foreign policy. There's no one else right now I can really trust that's not Trump, because, I just don't think the other people have the will and the mindset to really do it. Thankfully, Rubio did a good job, and Vance has done a great job. I still don't know where I stand with Rubio. Overall, I guess because he still has a little bit of the old guard, but Rubio and Vance were a big part of Trump's successful capture, and so I have to say, give them credit for their competence in doing so. So you give them where you get it. So anyway, that's where I stand on that. Just needed to clarify to kind of show people show you guys as my viewers that I've kind of reconsidered where I stood a little bit. You know, I'm still more isolationist overall, and I think that we should still focus on domestic policies more. That needs to be the emphasis. But I think largely Trump has to kind of do this because Congress is not necessarily cooperating. Look what Congress literally, while everyone's looking at all this right now with all the craziness what happened with obviously what happened in Venezuela and Trump focusing on Greenland and also what's happening in Minnesota right now. That's why, and you have Congress, while no one's paying attention, voting to advance the Obama subsidies. And of course, enough Republicans caving with them to do it. So I don't know. Anyway, that's all I have for this video. I definitely think Trump is definitely moving how we do foreign policy in America First direction, and it sounds to me, imperialism is definitely different than typical neoconservatism. And no, I need to emphasize for my last video, Trump's not a neocon. He's not. Trump doesn't believe in interventionists just for intervention, which neocons generally do, but I don't think Trump believes that. Trump, this is more specific on why, and protecting our hemisphere makes sense. So, and I think it is America first. So I think Trump's right on, but I think we still have to be skeptical, and whether you like it or not, just sit back, have some popcorn, and watch the show and see what happens. I'm hearing the GDP is up, with because of this deal with Venezuela, so it definitely is benefiting America. And the good part is you may see your gas prices go down, which will help inflation a little, some. So anyway, that's all I have for this video. If you please like. If you dislike it, and I don't know, let me know down below what you think about this. One question is, are we headed to a more imperialistic direction? Is what happening in Venezuela, is that going to be done in Mexico, Cuba? I know Greenland is the most likely, but is kind of controlling the resources of these countries. Is that something you support? Is that something? Remember, Trump's a risk taker. That's the thing. He's a risk taker. So people are going to doom and gloom, and Trump can't always control that. But this is the thing. When you want to make change to this country, you have to take risks. And, that's the problem. Some people complain about and know what they want America for, but then they get upset when Trump does risks. So it takes risks to actually change America for the good. So anyway, that's all I have for today. But again, let me know on the bottom, is imperialism where we need to go? And I will be making a video next about how we can avoid communism coming to America. Because I'm nervous about that, and we should be, especially what happened with the Mamdani. So, peace out.